The call came at 7:14 in the morning, while I was still in my hospital gown and hadn't yet had my first cup of coffee in 11 days. I remember the exact number because I'd been counting. 11 days without coffee. My cardiologist had been firm about it. No caffeine, no salt, no stress. I'd managed 2 out of 3. My phone was sitting on the meal tray beside a cup of lukewarm decaf and a small container of apple juice with a foil lid. When it buzzed, I assumed it was my son-in-law calling again about the garage. He'd been asking about my socket wrench set ever since I was admitted to St. Michael's. But the number on the screen wasn't his. It was a Toronto area code I didn't recognize. I answered out of habit. 62 years of answering phones will do that to you. "Is this Edmund Harlow?" the man asked. "It is," I said. "Mr. Harlow, this is Constable Briggs with Toronto Police Services. We've received a formal complaint and I need to make you aware of it." I looked at my arm. The IV line was taped just below my wrist, a small bruise yellowing around the entry point from a failed stick 2 days earlier. I pressed my thumb against it lightly, not to hurt myself, just to feel something solid. "What kind of complaint?" I asked. "Sir, we've received a report alleging financial elder abuse, specifically unauthorized access to family assets and manipulation of estate documents." The monitor beside me beeped steadily. I counted 3 beats before I said anything. "Filed by whom?" There was a pause. "Your daughter, sir. I have one daughter. Her name is Sylvia. She's 41 years old. She lives in Etobicoke, and she was the one who'd driven me to the emergency room 11 days ago, when my heart decided to remind me it had been working too hard for too long. She'd held my hand in the waiting room. She'd spoken to the nurses. She'd cried a little, quietly, by the window when she thought I wasn't watching. And apparently sometime in the 11 days since then, she'd also filed a police report against me. "I'm in the hospital," I said. My voice came out even, which surprised me. "We're aware of that, sir. I've been here since the 14th. You can verify that with the cardiology unit." "We understand," the constable said, "but a formal complaint requires a formal response. When you're able, we'd ask that you come in to speak with an investigator." After we hung up, I sat there for a long time. The breakfast cart was making its way down the hall, wheels squeaking against the linoleum. I could hear it getting closer, pausing at each room, the soft clatter of trays. Ordinary sounds. The kind of sounds that keep going no matter what falls apart. I pressed the call button and asked my nurse, a quiet, careful man named Antoine who never made me feel like a burden, if he could bring me a printed copy of my admission records. He looked at me for a moment, the kind of look that sees more than it lets on, and said he'd see what he could do. Then I called my daughter. She answered on the second ring. Background sounds, her kitchen, I thought. The faint hiss of something on the stove. "Dad," she said, "not warm, not cold, flat." "The police called me this morning," I said. Silence. Then I was going to explain. I'd appreciate that. I just needed something formal, something that would make things stop. "Make what stop?" she exhaled. "You know what, Dad? The account. The house. The way you've been moving things around without telling anyone." I looked at the whiteboard across from my bed. My name, my attending physician, my admission date. All of it in blue marker. All of it perfectly accurate. All of it real. "Sylvia," I said carefully, "what accounts do you think I've been moving?" "The joint one. The one Mom was on. My wife Elaine passed away 19 months ago. Pancreatic cancer. We had 61 days between diagnosis and the end. I spent every one of them beside her. After she died, I did what anyone does. I grieved. I sorted through paperwork. I met with our family lawyer, and I updated the accounts to reflect that there was now only one of us. That, apparently, had become evidence of something. That account was changed by my lawyer, I said. You were seesawed on the letter. I never got any letter. I can provide proof that it was sent. That's not the point. Her voice shifted. Something tighter came into it. You've also been talking to a financial advisor without telling me. Moving RRSP funds. Changing the beneficiary on the house insurance. Every one of those things was true. Every one of them was also legal, documented, and mine to decide. I'm 62, I said. I'm allowed to manage my own finances. Not when you're not well. There it was. Not well. The softest cage anyone has ever built. 2 words that can turn an adult into a child, a man into a patient, a decision into a symptom. I'm in the hospital for a cardiac event, I said. That doesn't affect my cognitive function. Dad, I'm not trying to fight. Then tell me who helped you file that report. Another silence. Longer this time. I had some guidance, she said. From your husband. She didn't answer. I ended the call before I said something I'd regret. My son-in-law's name is Jeff. He's 44, works in commercial real estate, and has always treated conversations about inheritance the way a contractor treats a renovation estimate, interested in the numbers, quiet about the markup. Elaine never fully trusted him. She never said so directly, but I could tell from the way she'd go still whenever the subject of the house came up at family dinners. I hadn't wanted to see what she was seeing. That's the part I kept coming back to, lying in that hospital bed with the monitor beeping and the breakfast cart finally arriving outside my door. I hadn't wanted to see it, so I hadn't. Antoine brought my records that afternoon. A thick printout, more pages than I expected, every day documented in precise clinical language. Medication times, vitals, nurse notes, physician rounds. I read through it slowly, flagging dates with a pen the nurse had lent me. The dates the police report cited, I managed to get Constable Briggs to email me a summary, were spread across 3 weeks. 2 incidents before my hospitalization, 1 during. The one during was easy. I was here. There was a timestamp for everything. The 2 before were trickier, not because I hadn't been home, but because being home is harder to prove than being wired to a heart monitor. I called my family lawyer that afternoon. She's been handling my affairs for 12 years. When I explained the situation, she went quiet in the way she always does when she's organizing her thoughts. Then she said, "Edmund, is there any possibility Sylvia has signing authority on anything she shouldn't?" I thought about it. She's on my emergency contact list. That's it? Nothing financial? No. What about your estate documents? When were they last updated? After Elaine passed. We reviewed everything. And the current beneficiary structure, does Sylvia know the details? Not the specifics. I didn't think it was necessary yet. She paused. Given what you've told me, I think we should assume she has more information than you shared with her. People talk. Husbands ask questions. And if Jeff has contacts in the financial sector, he does, I said, then someone may have run a credit inquiry on your accounts. It's more common than people realize. I didn't feel panic. I felt the specific chill of something clicking into place that you'd been refusing to look at directly. What do I need to do? I asked. 3 things, she said. First, we freeze everything. RRSP, TFSA, the house's line of credit, today if possible. Second, we contact your estate planner and confirm no documents have been altered or submitted without your knowledge. Third, she paused. I need you to tell me honestly, have you signed anything in the last 6 months that you weren't entirely clear on? I thought about it carefully. No. Are you certain? I'm certain. All right, she said. Then we have the cleaner position. I'll start making calls. After we hung up, I asked Antoine if there was a way to get a printout of my visitor log. He checked with administration and came back 20 minutes later with a sheet. I looked at the names and times. My daughter had visited 3 times in 11 days. Short visits, 30 minutes or less. My son-in-law had come once on day 3 and spent most of it in the hallway on his phone. I remembered that visit. I'd been half asleep. He'd looked at the room, asked if I needed anything, and when I said I was fine, he'd seemed almost relieved to leave. That evening, my phone showed a notification from my investment account. Login attempt unsuccessful. Location flagged Mississauga. I didn't live in Mississauga. I hadn't been to Mississauga in 4 months. I called the investment line immediately. The representative confirmed the attempt had used my username but the wrong password 3 times, which triggered the lockout. She also confirmed that 2 days earlier, someone had successfully logged into my account's read-only portal using credentials I'd forgotten I'd set up 18 months ago for Elaine, so she could check our RRSP balance from her phone when she was too tired to ask me. That portal access had never been revoked, and it had been accessed from a device registered in Jeff's name. I asked for a full security log with timestamps and a formal fraud report. The representative was thorough, professional, and sounded like she'd handled this before. After I hung up, I texted my daughter, "We need to talk about Jeff and the investment account." "I know about the login." She called back in 4 minutes. "That was research," she said immediately. "He was trying to understand the asset picture. He doesn't have authorization to access my accounts. He was using Mom's old access. Your mother is dead, Sylvia." "Silence." "I know," she said quietly. And for just a moment, she sounded like herself again, like the person who'd cried by the window on day 1. "Then help me understand," I said, keeping my voice low. "What are you actually trying to do?" "I'm trying to make sure there's something left," she said. "That you're not giving it all away to some financial advisor you met 6 months ago. That financial advisor has a fiduciary license and has worked with my lawyer for 3 years. She's not a scam artist, Sylvia. She's doing her job." "You changed your beneficiaries." "I did. After your mother died. That's normal. You changed them away from me." There it was, the thing underneath everything else. Not fear for me, fear of what I'd decided. "I updated my estate plan," I said carefully. "I didn't cut you out, but I also didn't leave every decision to one name. That's not responsible planning. Your mother and I discussed this before she passed." Sylvia didn't respond for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was smaller. "Jeff said you were going to give it all to charity. Jeff doesn't know what he's talking about. He said he saw documents. He accessed a read-only portal with a dead woman's credentials. He saw account balances, not estate documents. And even if he had seen my estate plan, it's mine. I'm allowed to write it however I want." She went quiet. "I need you to withdraw the police report," I said, "and I need Jeff to stay out of my financial accounts. He was just trying to help." "I'm going to pretend you believe that," I said, "but I want it stopped." She says she talked to him. She didn't say she'd withdraw the report. I called my lawyer back and relayed the conversation. She was quiet for a moment. Then, "The login is the important piece. That's potentially unauthorized access to financial information. If we document it formally, it changes the character of this situation from a family dispute to something the police will take more seriously in the other direction." "You mean it flips?" "It establishes that someone in your household has been accessing your accounts without authorization while simultaneously filing a complaint accusing you of financial mismanagement." Courts notice irony. The next 2 days were quieter but busier in the way that paperwork makes things busy. My lawyer filed a counter-report with the Ontario Securities Commission documenting the unauthorized account access. My investment company froze the read-only portal and issued a formal log of all access attempts. My estate planner confirmed that no documents had been altered and that my current will and beneficiary designations were exactly as I'd last approved them. I also got a call from my grandson. He's 19, studying at U of T, and the kind of young man who says what he means because he hasn't yet learned that most people don't. He called to say he'd heard there was trouble and asked if I was all right. I'm all right, I said. Mom's really stressed, he told me. I know. Geff keeps going into the office at weird times, like late at night. It's been going on for a while. I didn't say anything to that, but I wrote it down. On day 16, Constable Briggs called again. His tone was different this time, not unfriendly before, but more careful now. Deliberate. Mr. Harlow, he said, we've received some additional documentation related to your file. From my lawyer, yes, that's right. I want to be transparent. There are some inconsistencies in the original report that we're going to need to look at more closely. I understand. Specifically around the account access timeline. He paused. The dates in the complaint against you overlap significantly with dates where someone else appears to have been accessing your accounts. Yes, I said, I'm aware. Were you planning to pursue that separately? My lawyer is. Another pause. All right. I'd still like to meet with you when you're discharged, if that's possible. Just for the record. Of course, I said. I was discharged 4 days later. 20 days total. My cardiologist shook my hand and told me to walk every day, watch the sodium, and try to find something that made me laugh at least once a week. He said it like a prescription, which I suppose it was. My son-in-law did not come to help me pack up. My daughter came, but she was quiet in the particular way of someone who knows a conversation is coming and hasn't decided yet what side of it she wants to be on. We drove back to my house in Scarborough, mostly in silence. When we pulled into the driveway, I saw that nothing had changed outside. The garden was the same. The old birch tree was still losing its bark, the way it always does in late fall. The wind chime. Elaine had hung off the eaves, was turning slowly in the November air. Inside was a different feeling, the kind of absence that settles into a house when someone's been moving through it with purpose that isn't yours. I walked through each room. Nothing was missing, nothing was damaged. But in my home office, the filing cabinet beside my desk had been left not quite closed. I always close it. Elaine used to tease me about it. I close it even when I'm going right back to it in 10 minutes. I checked the drawer, my physical estate documents, the folder my lawyer had copies of, were there. But they'd been moved, reordered, someone had gone through them. I took photos of everything. Then I called my lawyer and told her. That's what we needed, she said quietly. What does it mean? It means this wasn't just a financial fishing expedition. Someone wanted to know exactly what the will said. Who gets what? Under what conditions? She paused. Edmund, I want to ask you something honestly. Do you know if there are any debts on Jeff's side that you're not aware of? I thought about the late nights my grandson had mentioned, the weird hours. I don't know, I said, but I think we should find out. It took another 3 weeks. My lawyer worked with a credit investigator, someone she'd used before, licensed under Ontario law, careful and thorough. What came back was a picture I hadn't wanted to see, but once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. Jeff had been carrying significant personal debt for 2 years. Not catastrophic, but enough. A failed private investment in a condo project that hadn't gone through, 3 maxed lines of credit in his name alone, and a mortgage application he'd made 8 months ago, while Elaine was still alive, that had listed my home as a potential co-secured asset. The application had been declined. He'd needed money. He'd looked at what I had. He'd convinced my daughter that I was mismanaging things. Probably not with outright lies, just with the particular shape of a concerned husband who frames everything as worry. and she'd gone to the police because she believed him. I don't think she knew all of it. I've thought about this a lot in the months since, and I think she walked into that police station genuinely scared, but she'd also been walking into it with a map someone else had drawn. The meeting with Constable Briggs happened in January, in a small interview room at a division I'd never been to before. My lawyer came with me. I brought the folder, medical records, account logs, estate documents, the photo of my filing cabinet, the credit investigation summary. Briggs went through it methodically. He was thorough in the way that good investigators are, not trying to reach a conclusion, just trying to understand the sequence. At the end, he leaned back and said, "Mr. Harlow, the original complaint against you, the financial elder abuse allegation. We'll be closing that without further action. There's no evidence to support it." "Thank you," I said. "The access to your accounts without authorization, that's something we're going to look into separately. Your lawyer has already filed the OSC report." "She has." He nodded. "And the document review at your home, that may factor into a broader review depending on what we find." My lawyer said, "We understand. We're cooperating fully." On the drive back, she asked me how I was doing. Not in the clinical way, in the way someone asks when they actually want to know. "I'm all right," I said, and I meant it, more or less. My relationship with my daughter has been difficult since then, not severed. She called me in February, 2 months after everything had become clear to her in the way things become clear when the person who'd been framing them for you is no longer the loudest voice in the room. She said, "I didn't know about the debt." "I know," I said. "I thought I was protecting you. I know that too. It wasn't forgiveness on that phone call. It wasn't a full accounting either. But it was honest, and honest is somewhere to start. Jeff is no longer in the picture. Not because of anything I did. My daughter made that decision herself. The OSC investigation is ongoing. My lawyer has told me not to speculate about outcomes, so I won't. What I will say is this. I'm 62 years old. I spent 40 years building a life with a woman I loved, paying my taxes, maintaining a home, planning carefully for the end of things because that's what responsible people do. I lost that woman 19 months ago, and while I was lying in a hospital bed trying to persuade my heart to keep going, someone used the system I'd spent a lifetime respecting. The banks, the police, the court of family opinion, to try to take the last things I had left. They didn't take anything, not because I'm exceptional, just because I'd spent enough years doing paperwork to know what paperwork can do in return. If you're listening to this and you're in the years where things start to shift, where the people around you start to make decisions about you instead of with you, write things down. Keep your documents. Know your lawyer's number by heart, and don't confuse someone saying they're worried about you with someone actually acting in your interest. Those are two different things that can wear the same face for a very long time. I still close the filing cabinet every time I leave the room. Old habit. Elaine would have said I was being particular. Now I think she'd say I was being smart. I like to think she'd be right on both counts. I keep thinking about the filing cabinet. The one beside my desk that was left open just a fraction, not broken into, not ransacked, just quietly disturbed by someone who'd been careful enough to almost put things back. That small gap told me more about the situation than any phone call had. It told me that what happened wasn't impulsive, it was patient. And patience in the wrong hands is its own kind of damage. What I've come to understand, sitting with all of it over these past months, is that things tend to find their own level eventually. Not because the universe is watching, not because good people are rewarded on some cosmic schedule. I'm too old and have been through too much to believe in that kind of tidiness. But because dishonest structures require constant maintenance. Every lie needs another lie behind it to stay standing. Kef's debt had been accumulating for 2 years before any of this began. The condo deal, the maxed credit lines, the mortgage application that used my home as collateral without my knowledge. None of that held together on its own. It needed a story. The story needed my daughter. And my daughter needed to believe she was protecting me, because that was the only version of events she could have lived with. I don't say that to excuse her. What she did caused real harm. To my name, to my peace of mind, to 20 days I spent in a hospital already fighting to stay healthy. But I also know that people rarely do damaging things from a place of pure malice. Usually there's fear underneath. Sometimes love, badly expressed. The knowing of that doesn't erase the damage. It just helps me understand what I'm actually dealing with. What protected me in the end wasn't luck. It was 40 years of boring, unglamorous habit. Keeping records. Knowing my lawyer. Updating documents when life changed instead of leaving things vague because vague felt easier. I'd done those things because Elaine and I had agreed that responsible people don't leave messes for others to sort out. We never imagined those habits would one day be the thing standing between my name and a fraud allegation. But there it was. There's something I want to say to anyone who's in the years where this kind of thing becomes possible, where the people around you start making assumptions about what you can handle, or what you deserve, or what you'll notice. The most important thing you can do is stay clear-headed enough to ask questions when something feels wrong, honest enough with yourself to see what you've been avoiding, and steady enough not to collapse under the pressure of someone else's version of events. Not because you owe anyone a fight, but because your name, your decisions, and the life you built belong to you, and the only way to protect them is to actually know what they are. Antoine, the nurse who brought me my records without making me feel like a burden for asking. He didn't know he was part of this. He was just doing his job carefully. But careful people, doing ordinary things well, are often the hinge the whole story turns on. I close the filing cabinet every time I leave the room. I always have. I always will.